Jeremiah, my brother, man, appreciate you joining the podcast today. Excited to talk to you more about everything that you're building with White Sports Ventures and sports as an asset class. So, welcome.
Appreciate you having me, man. It's a pleasure, man.
For sure, for sure. Let's start back, at the beginning of your soccer career. When you look back at, playing soccer throughout your life professionally, I had the blessing and opportunity to do so. What experiences or lessons do you take away that helped you in the business world and everything that you're building now?
Well, the primary influences are just the normal things: the dedication, the hard work, the ability to focus in and focus for longer periods of time than most, right? The things that I had to really learn from, particularly as I was transitioning from the sports world to the business world, was the difference in language,
Mm,
right? And the different the way in which you get results in the business world isn't always directly. It's not always similar to the things you have to do to get results in the sports world. Meaning, um, in sports, the more you focus on your cross, for instance, in soccer, typically the better you get at your cross, and you kind of get that impact directly into the game. Sometimes in business, the more you refine the product or service, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to result in the success of the product or service, right? So I had to learn what levers to push and pull to get the results I wanted, and sometimes that required a different and completely different vocabulary, but a completely different or learning a different definition of what it means to have impact.
Most athletes stay close to the game in some capacity, whether that's coaching or becoming an agent or anything of that nature. What made you kind of gravitate towards the venture and investing world?
Great question. So I actually started with an IT and marketing firm. Um, just kind of rewinding, my dad was a pretty influential business person in the city of Philadelphia. He did a lot of major real estate projects in Philadelphia when I was a kid, so I had a lot of exposure to business and to obviously real estate and event planning because he ran something called the Uptown Theater in North Philly back in the day. So I got to, as a kid, I got to meet some really legendary musicians and artists and things like that. So it
Oh,
was pretty unique for me. But rewinding even further, my family on that side are farm. They're country folks. So we always had a garden. So what I didn't realize back then was it was the skills that I learned growing a garden and participating in that process, picking corn, those sorts of things were really the fundamentals of what it means to be an investor, honestly. So
wow.
yeah, yeah. So that the skills of planting a seed, being patient, knowing when to harvest, also knowing when something's ripe to eat versus ripe to harvest, right? And having that understanding and discipline. I mean, learning patience, particularly as an investor, but learning patience as a kid is really like a superpower that we overlook.
Yeah, I love that parallel and that comparison. That's super. I've never heard it put that way, but it makes a lot of sense. But talk about, White Sports Ventures. When did that kind of come into the mix? What made you want to start, this venture and kind of build out this company in the world of sports and sports investing?
So I sold my IT firm, and then I'd gotten into a little private equity. And then from there, I started a hedge fund. Excuse me, and it was a digital asset hedge fund. We exited out of that, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, I think now's the time to get back into what I love, which is soccer, right? Obviously, and it really means the most to me to make an impact on the youth side of the game. Um, So I just tried to knit all of my skills and passions together into a vehicle that would give me the ability to make the biggest impact and largest contribution possible. And that's how White Sports Ventures became. I mean, it was actually a company I started a while ago, but I just kind of didn't really it didn't have an identity in the way it did once I kind of decided to focus on it.
Now you're kind of behind the scenes and a little low key. You're not too public facing, but you have a really strong, vast network and a lot of solid relationships. So when you look at other traditional investors, do you think as a former athlete, a former player, you see opportunities a little bit differently? Like there's a skill set that gives you a different perspective on how to source deals, identify good opportunities, etc.
Yeah, I'm in a really interesting position because not only did I play soccer and play at the highest levels all the way through, I have a son that's played at the highest level. So he actually was on the lower end of the soccer hierarchy in terms of his, where he kind of ranked, and then we kind of adjusted his training regimen and he took off. So he ended up playing for New York Red Bull, the Philadelphia Union, and then he played for the U.S. youth national teams, USA teams, and now he's in Europe. So I saw the soccer landscape when I was going through, but then I also got a chance to see it again as he was going through. And then by that time, obviously, I'd exited some companies. I had made some investments in the space with teams and things like that. So I had a really clear sense of what the environment needed. Um, how I could help families, how I could help clubs, how I could make again an impact in the space. And
Yeah.
um, I saw that it was obviously a mature market, right? I mean, anything that's been around as long as youth soccer has been, and pro soccer at this point is mature at this point, but it really needed some structure and some support and some rails through which you could start to establish trust, transparency, and then build an economic layer on top of that trust and transparency. So um, that's the mission I decided to take on, which is uh, trying to add those layers to the space.
And diving a little bit deeper into like some of the specific challenges you're seeing in not only youth sport or youth soccer, but youth sports as a whole. Like when you kind of look through the lens of like what your son had to go through, and even as a parent, what you've seen, what are some of those challenges that you think parents and also kids are facing in the youth sports industry as we're seeing a lot of institutional capital obviously coming into the space, and there's a ton of fragmentation. But like, what are those specific challenges or hurdles that you think the space needs to overcome in the next decade to actually succeed long term?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one is really around transparency and decision making, right? I mean, you go in and you spend X amount of dollars a year, and at the end of that process, you maybe spent, let's say you spent $10,000 a year, and all in, right? It can range between 5 to 20 or even more, right? So at least in soccer, I'm sure it's similar in basketball.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're like, okay, well, what did I actually spend? What did I buy? Where did
Right.
my money actually go? Where's the lever, right? And actually, do I know what I wanted out of that, right? So, I mean, at those numbers, we're talking about an investment.
Yeah.
It's not just okay, my kid's going to sign up to play. We're talking about a serious investment where you want some significant outcome. And I think the disconnect between what people are why people are spending the money and what they're getting needs some clarification.
Hmm.
Um, I'm writing an article now that talks about pay to play, and we kind of, I'm sure in basketball it's the same thing. I mean, we have this notion of pay to play, but it's not pay to play really. It's pay to participate.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be really clear about the language so that we can manage some of the mania around our behavior around youth sport, but also to help guide the spend, so that the spend can be, um, it can be made in a trust based environment.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one issue. Another issue is um, being really clear about, at least from the club facing side, right? So if I'm not clear on my value proposition, and I think clubs kind of take advantage of this to an extent, right? If I'm not clear on my value proposition, or let's say I am, but that value proposition isn't valuable to the customer, they're not going to spend money with you.
Hmm.
And I think we can. I think that transparency layer also has to go into what clubs market and advertise. And sometimes clubs will say things to parents who are the customer that are only relevant to the users who are the players,
Hmm.
right? And then they'll say things to the customers that don't really matter to the users. So you have a buyer, you have a seller, you have a customer, you have a seller, you have a user,
User.
and then you have this informational disequilibrium where the club steps in as the expert,
Yeah.
right? But that messaging to the customer and that messaging to the user is always going to be, it always needs to be targeted and clear and tailored. So I think we get into a lot of trouble by not clarifying the messaging, but also clarifying where each interested party sits in that definition of a transaction. I think that's really important. And I think when you start to solve for some of those definition based inconsistencies, you start to find a lot of the problems in these clubs and areas that can be addressed.
Hmm. So there's a misalignment between how the club communicates with the players who are the users and the customers who are the parents. That's what you're saying,
Correct.
essentially.
A massive misalignment,
Yeah.
a massive misalignment. And because you're not communicating effectively to each interested party, what happens is you don't get to, you're not actually refining the value proposition
Yeah.
because you're missing out on that feedback loop, right? An accurate, transparent, trust-based feedback loop, right?
Mm.
So you create a whole host of additional problems that come from that lack of clarity.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about, the portfolio that you've been able to build under White Sports Ventures. Like, what are some of the companies that you're building out that you're looking to acquire? Like, talk more about kind of the strategy behind it.
Yeah. So the let's talk about the trust layer first. The
Okay.
trust layer for me starts with media.
Mm.
Okay. I think I had a strategy. I was going to go in and start buying up youth soccer clubs, buying the underlying real estate. Like that. That's an approach to take. But I really felt that um, I wanted to take the opposite approach, which was buying up digital real estate, which is the media side of these kids' experiences, and creating uh, um, media environments that had very high quality production, professionalized production, but also very clear operating standards and principles that would would make these platforms very trusted. So we never highlight kids that are being embarrassed, right? We never focus on things that are negative about a player. Like it's always we have very, very firm operating principles that I do not budge on, right?
Hmm.
And I think over time that's gained us a lot of credibility and equity in the space, right? So it's capturing as much of that real estate and pushing those values through the mechanism through which these kids connect with each other and market themselves to other coaches in other leagues and other countries, etc. And it costs them nothing, and that was a really important thing for me,
Hmm.
right? So to build this media ecosystem in a way that is professionalized enough, valuable enough, and free to the players that they could add to their portfolio because they're already spending so much money, but they can, if they get a clip on footy access, for instance, or they're highlighted on Drip FC or anything like that, they actually can use it. And like for instance with footy, we've taken it even further where we've built out this entire platform. We're ranking players, we're ranking teams based on very clear criteria. Players have their own profiles, all their data, all their metrics. Like if you're in the top 100, it's very clear why you're a standout player.
Yep.
That's actually a free, if you're performing, that's a free calling card that you can take, our free resume essentially, that you can take to a club and use. So it's giving back to the sport. It's rewarding the kids that are on the higher end that are successful. And you can't help everyone, but you're rewarding the ones that are really really outperforming
Hmm.
at $0 to them, at zero cost to them. Also, again, you can't forget about the 99% because that's where the bulk of the market is. And I have another platform called Next Gen Media, and Next Gen focuses exclusively on the underreported, underrepresented player. And we highlight them as well, but just in a different way, which means if they get recruited to a school, if their team beats a team that they shouldn't necessarily beat on paper, if their high school has any success or things like this, this is a way for them to kind of add a little more, a little extra to their resume and
Yeah.
profile going forward, right? So it's not going to help them get into Wake Forest, right, or Duke or anything like that, but it'll make their portfolio a little more well rounded and show and have a track record of that.
Hmm.
So we partner directly with clubs to get that explicit information from those clubs for that platform in particular. Footy's the highest level players. We're capturing that data. Next gen, 99%, capturing more of the experiential, right, data. And then at Drip FC, what we're doing is we're capturing more of the culture side of things, right? The fun aspect, the intersection between style, culture, and the game. And then I've added another platform. It's one of the largest Mexican American facing platforms in the country. So that's closing, and then I'm working on another deal with a massive company. I can't mention here, but we're working on that now too.
That's amazing, man. It reminds me of like when I was in high school and Rivals sports came out with the rankings, and I played with a
Yeah,
lot of high like top 150 basketball players in high school, and we would all after school go look and see if they updated the rankings, and I was never on there. I was probably top 500 in the country, but I just remember like the excitement, from a kid's perspective of like seeing your name up there. And then you had the local media channels who would highlight players like me that were solid but weren't in the top of the top. So
that's right.
I could see how both kind of provides a different perspective and lens, but ultimately value to the entire youth soccer ecosystem,
That's right.
and supporting those kids. But shifting a little bit, talk about Adunde Sports and what you're building out there. Because the last time we talked, you had huge plans. I don't know how much you can divulge, but would love to kind of give some context around that and how that fits in the portfolio as well.
Yeah, so there's the digital side of media and experience, right? That experiential side. And then there's the analog, which is the in-person piece. And I think a lot of clubs, sports organizations are trying to solve for this, right? How do you maximize fan engagement online? And then how do you get more butts in seats?
Yep.
Um, so my approach to addressing this was to go and look for the biggest events possible to partner with. And luckily in my home city, there was the Odunde Festival, which has been around for decades. Um, it is the largest African diaspora street festival in the country. It gets 500,000 visitors annually. We're expecting probably 700, 750 this year, just because of the nature of the World Cup year, America 250, all these different things. Um, it in the first year we captured this media data, we got 500,000,000 impressions in a few days, 5 days or so. We're expecting 1 billion this year, just given the lead time. And then um, it has a $30 million economic impact in Pennsylvania, and a
It's
27
huge.
million. Yeah, so it's huge. So we did a 50-50 venture, White Sport Ventures in Odunde. So we created Odunde Sports. It's the only partnership that the festival actually has. So we co-own it 50-50. And because I came to them and I said, hey man, how are we gonna have a street festival without sports? Especially in the diaspora, like we gotta have sports, but not 11 aside or 5 on 5. Let's make it accessible to people and break this thing down to a level everyone understands, because everyone's played 1v1 ball, 2v2 ball, right? Whether it's basketball, whether it's soccer, whatever, everyone's played at that level. So that now becomes accessible to everyone. And I think you've got a lot of organizations that are seeing that, to play the game and participate, it doesn't have to look a certain way, right? Um, which becomes more interesting and inclusive of everyone else. So that's what we did last year, and it was great. And this year, we're taking it to the next level. I mean, we're bringing sponsors in, partnerships. We've got 4 blocks of the 16 block festival for just dedicated to sports. This is how serious. Like it went from 1 block year one, now we're at 4 blocks.
Yeah,
So this is not a joke in a festival that averages 500,000 people. So, I mean, this is like a sponsor's dream here. You know what I mean? Um, so, we're building a brand new website now. It's underway. It's amazing. I can't wait to release it. But yeah, it's the digital and then the analog, right? The online experience, the physical experience, and then you know, building those layers, those monetization rails and layers as well. So
that's incredible, man. And obviously we have the World Cup coming up here soon. Talk about its impact on Adunde and then everything that you're doing from the media side. Like, what do you think? How do you think that's going to shape the future of youth soccer in this country?
it's a good question.
Or at least what do you hope?
Yeah. So number one, man, I like um, again, soccer is really important to me. It's given me opportunities. It's the cornerstone of my development, right? And I'm just like basketball is for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the game, and my hope is that we can use this event as a unifier, this event as a way to bring people together, not as a tool for any reasons, right? Not to be political, but it's just I really hope that we can use this as a way to celebrate other cultures, celebrate our differences, come together, right? And that's how we're going to use it for Odunde as a way to expose people to the game, introduce people to the game, bring people together with food, art, music, dance, and culture, and celebrate the game. I'll have basketball players coming to celebrate the game, football players coming to celebrate the game, and any other sports athlete that wants to come and celebrate the game with other athletes because we plan on celebrating their games too. So I just want you know this global event and the environment we create around it to just have a positive impact on the city. And if we can make a few more soccer fans, that'd be great.
That's beautiful, man. Last couple questions before we wrap up here. When you look out, let's say 5 to 10 years from now, what do you want White Sports Ventures to be known for inside the global sports ecosystem?
Yeah, I want White Sports Ventures to be known for um, creating clarity within a very mature but undefined space. Um, at the end of the day, we're going to make smart investments. We're going to build those assets to be very valuable. We're building them to be very valuable now. I mean, there's no question about that. But what gives me the most joy is when people say, "Hey, you know, thanks to your platform, we got recruited," or "We, thanks to your platform," when they're so happy that they were covered on the platform, and it's a surprise because they had no idea. Or when parents say, "Hey, just the fact that you added this schedule or platform on your platform and made it clearer for me to be able to follow. Now I could share the information and the family could follow easier." So it's really in the nuances, right? The little things that we do that cost us money and time, but we know and there's no real direct financial ROI, but there's an ROI in terms of trust and in terms of just helping make things a little smoother and a little clearer and a little more streamlined and understandable.
Hmm.
Um, I wrote an article again the other day that talks about the fact that um, the real bottlenecks are in the fact that there aren't enough referees because they're getting the crap kicked out of them by parents. Insurance companies are consolidating. It's in these sort of areas where you need supply, right?
Hmm.
There are more teams that need field space than there are fields in a lot in like in the Bay Area, for instance. And it's like, well, where's that? Where are the rails that help us solve some of these, these problems of more continuity problems,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, these are the problems I want to solve, and I want WSV to mean some to have an impact in those areas, you know.
Yeah.
So
No, for sure. Jeremiah, I appreciate it, man. Lastly, can you let people know where they can learn more about you, but also everything that you're doing with White Sports Ventures?
yeah, so my Instagram is Jeremiah White I. So Jeremiah White 3, because I'm the third edition of four generations.
I love it. That's a
Yeah,
legacy right there.
that's it. That's it. And then uh, if you go to White Sports Ventures, White Sports with an S, ventures.com, I've got reports. I've got detailed reports. I did a really long, like a really nice, in-depth World Cup report. Um, Talks about some really interesting things. For folks that want to get into the details, talking about how I think that local spending is what's really going to help drive impact long term from this World Cup cycle. So it's a really interesting one. And then my insights, I release insights. It's a article I write every week. They're pretty powerful. And then there's the newsletter, which kind of aggregates all important news around the world in soccer and soccer media, soccer tech, soccer business. So it just kind of aggregates all these great stories into one newsletter that you can kind of read through as you want. And then I'm launching two courses on the WSU platform coming up soon. One is how to get your company, your sports organization, investment ready, um, and that's like over 4 or 5 weeks. And then another one, how to turn your sports organization into a media company, because I think most companies need to start thinking like media
Yeah.
brands. So how to do that in 14 days. So, and I've got worksheets. I've got everything laid out. They're really in depth, like really high level. So and the goal is if you take the course, by the end of the course, it's not just okay. I have to do this, do this, do this. No, you are ready to act. You're ready for action. Like you are live by the end of the course, and that's really it. And it's completely free. Everything on the site is completely free. So,
I love it. Jeremiah, man, this has been super insightful. Appreciate your time, brother, and best of luck going forward.
my man, thank you for doing this, bro.
Absolutely.